let's go through some calculation example of standalone non-proportional reinsurance. In this question, it combines two types of non-proportional reinsurance, which is number one, working excess, and number two, catastrophic excess of loss. In other words, this is standalone non-proportional reinsurance because it is not combined with proportional. Okay, so you cannot see there is a surplus, you cannot see there is quota share, it is just non-proportional. So given the question is, insurance company has both excess of loss and catastrophic excess of loss reinsurance arrangement as follows. So for working excess, the cover is 2 million, excess of a deductible of 1 million. For catastrophic excess of loss, the cover is 5 million in excess of 500,000. So the insurer experiences 5 claims due to one event as the following. So there are 5 claims, and the 5 claims have 5 gross sum insured and 5 gross losses. Okay, first of all, you have to determine how much is the risk, the net risk retained by the insurer from all these 5. So we know, for example, number one, the gross sum insured is 2.5, but is it 100% retained by the insurer? Because you have to first convert the gross sum insured to net sum insured. So you know that. So we know that retention per risk is actually this amount, 2 million, the cover plus the deductible, which is 3 million. So for all the risks, insurer will retain up to 3 million per risk. You have to remember that. So if the question give you gross sum insured, meaning that you have to convert it to net, because insurer will only retain, for example, for this question, they will only retain up to 3 million. How do you get this 3 million? It is actually the total of cover and deductible for working excess. Okay. For example, for risk number one, a gross sum insured of 2.5 million, knowing that insurer can retain up to 3 million, for risk number one, they will also retain up to 2.5 million, meaning that they are retaining 100% of the risk. For risk number two, gross sum insured given is 3.5 million. So we are not sure, or not sure that they will retain 100% because they will retain up to 3 million, meaning that the net sum insured retain is 3 million maximum. So they are not going to retain the whole 3.5 million, but only up to 3 million. In terms of percentage, how much will be the percentage retained? So let's calculate. Divide by the gross. Roughly, insurer will retain up to 85% of this risk. Okay, for risk number 3, gross sum insured is 4.5. The net is only up to 3 million. In terms of percentage, insurer will retain up to roughly 66.6%. For risk number 4, gross sum insured is 300,000. They will also retain up to 300,000. Going to be 100%. Risk number 5, gross sum insured is 5 million. Insurer can only able to retain up to 3 million. So in terms of percentage, they will retain 3 million divided by 5 million, 60%. So now you have complete the first step. The question asks calculate the amount of sum insured and losses retained by the insurer. So the insurer is actually retaining this much, the net sum insured. Okay, now we want to calculate the losses here. How much losses are paid or are retained by the insurer? So this is the gross loss for the first risk. The first risk has a gross sum insured of 2.5 million and a gross claim of 600,000. So since we know that insurer retain 100% of the first risk, they will also retain 100% of the gross loss for the first risk. So it's going to be 600,000. For risk number 2, for the claims of, for gross claim of 400,000, will insurer retain the whole 400,000? The answer is no, because they only retain 85% of the original risk. So meaning that the net loss retained is 400,000 times 85%. They're going to be 342,857.14 roughly. Okay, for risk number 3, with a gross loss of 1.8 million, insurer only retain up to 66.6% for risk number 3. So they are not going to pay the whole 1.8 million, but only up to this amount times the percentage. Only up to 1.2 million. Okay, let's see claim number 4. Claim number 4 has a gross claims of 10,000. With a gross sum insured of 300,000, insurer is also retaining 300,000, meaning that they are retaining 100% of risk number 4, and they will also have to pay 100% of gross loss number 4, which is 10,000. Okay, for risk number 5, with a gross sum insured of 5 million, we know that insurer retain up to 3 million or 60%. So net loss retained for gross loss number 5 is this amount times the percentage. So they are only paying, or they only retain, the loss retained by the insurer is 600,000. Okay, now we have to calculate how much claim, the amount paid by working excess of loss reinsurer. So now we know that this is the column to calculate out of this amount how much is paid by the reinsurer for each of these claims. Okay, the first net loss retained is for claim number 1 is 600,000. Knowing that the deductible is 1 million, for claim number 1, there's going to be 0 recovery from the excess of loss reinsurer, because this net loss retained is not more than the deductible of 1 million. Okay, for claim number 2, 342,857. Knowing that the deductible is 1 million, there is also 0 recovery for claims number 2, because the whole loss here is retained by the insurer, because this amount is less than 1 million. Okay, let's see for claim number 3. Net loss retained 1.2 million. Knowing that the deductible is 1 million, recovery from excess of loss reinsurer will be 1.2 million minus 1 million, that will be 200,000. Okay, for claims number 4, net loss retained is 10,000. We know that deductible is 1 million. 10,000 is less than 1 million, meaning that deductible or insurer will retain the whole 10,000 and zero recovery from the reinsurer. Okay, let's move to the last claim. With a net loss retained of 600,000, compare with the deductible of 1 million, meaning that there is also zero recovery from the reinsurer because 600,000 is less than 1 million, meaning that reinsurer is not involved with claims number 5. So overall, reinsurer is only involved with risk number 3 because this amount of net loss is more than the deductible. So let's highlight this a bit. Put it in green. So now we have answered the question. Calculate the total net loss retained and total excess of loss reinsurance recoveries. So total working excess of loss recovery is only 200,000. Okay, let's move to the last question. Calculate the amount recovered from the catastrophic reinsurer. Okay, we have not yet covered the theory part of catastrophic reinsurer, but we can at least understand how catastrophic reinsurer, how it works when it comes to calculation. Okay, remember that catastrophic reinsurer will cover per event, meaning that losses occurring, accumulation of losses which happen from one event. Cat loss protects accumulation of losses from one event. Total net losses retained by insurer from one event. Okay, from the calculation here, can you calculate the total net loss retained by the insurer from one event? Or in other words, the amount of losses not paid by the reinsurer, by the working excess of loss reinsurer, meaning that it should be the total of this. This is actually the total amount of losses retained by the insurer from one event. So claims 1, claims 2, 3, 4, 5 are all arising from one event. What is the event? The event is, let's say it is not mentioned here. Let's say it is from flood. So the total net losses retained by the insurer should be plus okay, so this is the total net losses retained by the insurer. Total net losses retained. So the function or the objective or the main role of catastrophic excess of loss reinsurance is to protect this amount, the accumulation of losses suffered by the insurer from one event. So knowing that the maximum cover of the catastrophic cover is 5 million in excess of 500,000, and it works similar to working excess. So this 500,000 is the deductible, and this is the maximum cover protected by the reinsurer. So we know that deductible is 500,000. We can straight away calculate cat loss, cat excess of loss recovery will be this amount minus the deductible 500,000. So this is the amount recovered from the catastrophic excess of loss reinsurer. Okay, so this is how to solve this type of question. Remember, there is gross sum insured, gross losses. You have to convert from gross to net, and from gross losses to net losses.